Welcome to MTG Friends. I'm Ryan. We're going to do Sliver Overlord for deck tech this episode. Now, we have done a couple other Sliver tribals. We're going to do Sliver tribal with the Overlord at the helm. So, as in all of our episodes for deck techs, let's look at the packages. So, like I said, we're going to be doing tribal in this, so we're going to have a whole lot of Sliver action going on. Some of these are completely swappable, so if there's a specific Sliver that you don't see in here, might either be in the maybe board we have already, or just swap it in and out. But this one is catering to the Sliver Overlord and its mechanics. So we've got what do we got here? We've got 38 creatures, which is actually more than typical. Typically, you're going to want to run roughly 30 to 35 creatures, and then depending on what kind of build you have will determine your other pieces. You know, ramp, usually it's an 8 to 10 to 12 pieces of ramp, depending on what you're doing, if you have a lot of mana dorks. Anyways, let's get into the packages. If you want more details about the general gist of what you should typically look for if you're new to Commander, hit me up with a comment below. I will walk you through what is typical in terms of land base, etc., etc., etc. But if you've seen our other episodes, you get a general idea of what is going to work for you in your EDH play. Whoa, man. Over explanation? Maybe. All right, so we got just one graveyard piece. We got some draw, a few tutors, the ones you would expect to see that you see in a lot of our episodes. The maybe boards, ones that didn't make the cut for this particular commander. A combo piece in here for infinite mana and a couple other really cool things. Protection, ramp, removal, just a few counterspells, a couple commander jank cards, and of course we have the slivers and the land and a few tribal pieces that you would expect in a tribal deck. All right, let's talk about the commander, and then we'll go through these packages. All right, Sliver Overlord, it is every color of the color wheel, as you can see. So our mana base is going to have a lot of mana fixing. We got a few mana dorks that are built into the slivers, etc., etc. I've said that like 2 or 3 times already. All right, 4/3, search library for a sliver card. And a lot of our slivers have mechanics that help the board state. Reveal that card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And for another 3, gain control of target sliver. We have a couple pieces in here which we called Commander Jank that actually turns your opponent's creatures into slivers, which is super hilarious and can win you games. All right, we get the gist of what this awesome sliver does. Like a couple of the other really cool sliver commanders, like the Sliver Queen, which we have in the deck, and a couple others. This one is really more specific about what the Sliver Overlord can do. So we have a bunch of swaps that maybe the Sliver Queen you can check out in our other episode, Sliver Queen, that won't be in there to reduce like the cost of the mechanics of the Sliver Queen, etc., etc., etc. All right, let's go into it. Well, apparently Architect wants us to check out the graveyard first. Oh, and as usual, you can check out this one below in the description. There'll be a link to this actual deck in Architect and a few other little spicy things in the description. All right, Fedo Dredging. This one is so that we can go grab slivers out of our graveyard. It is great. It's very perfect for tribal. So even if you're not running slivers, if you have another deck, this is a great include in black. All right, Intruder Alarm. This one is amazing for this type of deck. Creatures do not untap during their controller's untap phases. Whenever any creature comes into play, untap all creatures. So we can go infinite if we have, say, some mana dorks out there, like the Sliver mana dorks that we'll get to in a little bit. Or if we want to do mechanics with the Sliver Queen, where we're creating slivers for one and they just keep coming out, and then we have infinite mana. It's super awesome. So one of the awesome combos here is Intruder Alarm with, like, say, Mana Swift or Gem Hide, Sliver, that kind of stuff. you can start really creating some awesome stuff, especially if you're dropping slivers onto the board with, say, Sliver Queen, etc., etc. I'm going to stop saying etc. All right. A couple removal pieces. Cyclonic Rift. This one is a very huge staple in blue. For 7 Overlord, you get to bounce back all of your opponent's permanents minus their lands. Pretty jank. Kindred Dominance. It is a 7-drop, which is a little spendy, but it is catering towards us keeping our creatures on the board. Choose a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of the chosen type. We are not running hardly any mass removal except for these 2 cards because we don't want mass removal. And your opponents are probably going to have their fair share of mass removal already. We want to keep our board state as awesome and as big and wide as we possibly can for as long as we can. But we do have those 2 reset buttons. All right, in terms of some super jank with our commander, these 2 cards made the cut. Amoeboid Changeling, so therefore it's a Sliver. You can tap it, target creature gains all creature types until end of turn. And then if we have our commander on the board, we get to go snake said creature. Hilarious. And then the second part really doesn't matter. Target creature loses all creature types until end of turn. I mean, in a pinch, this might matter if you're dealing with Goblin Tribal or Elf Tribal or other things like that. Oh, might want to mention here, we haven't gotten to it yet, but for some of the tribal pieces, we specifically did not put in Coat of Arms because that helps other tribal type decks of our opponents. So you'll see a few other just slight differences like Door of Destiny, that kind of thing, which we will get to in a moment. The other one is Shield of Velas Vel. Changeling, it's an instant shapeshifter tribal card. Really cool out of Lorwyn, these tribal cards, sorceries, instants, etc. Creatures target player controls get 1 and gain all creature types till end of turn. So then again, if we got our commander out, we can spend a mere 1 in white and go start snaking other creatures of our opponents. And make sure you don't gloat too much when you snake them. There was a blue one as well. We did not put into this deck because it only targets 1 creature. Having this target all their creatures is super powerful. All right, okay, land. We're going to blast through the land real quick. It's got all the stuff you'd expect for land fixing. It's got the fetch lands, the shock lands, all of the other coming in untapped type stuff. So we'll just blast through this real quick. All the stuff you would expect to see, including Cavern of Souls, which makes our creatures not be able to be countered. I don't know if in your play group you run into a lot of blue counter this, counter that shenanigans, but in a lot of my play groups, there's a lot of blue sifted through all sorts of decks. City of Brass also, just lots and lots of things that are mana fixing. I think we have a total of maybe 5-6 basic lands in this, maybe a couple more, but ooh, and I love this infinity type style lands. This is the land that actually comes in as a shapeshifter, and you can make it a copy of a creature you have, which is great. But on the other side, if you need some land, that will come in as a blue mana source. Oh man, that is the coolest looking Godless Shrine. Is that a spaceship in front of it? That's super cool. Anyways, like I've said, all the fetch lands, all the shock lands, and everything else you'd expect to see in the cool iteration of, wow, I'm starting to babble. You get the turn. I don't think we are running any triomes in here. You can certainly put triomes in here. They do come in tapped, which is the downside. But maybe we are running triomes. I can't remember. I don't think we are. Verdant Catacombs, my favorite in terms of the fetch lands. Watery Grave, blah, 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 blah. Anything else? Okay, come on. There we go. So, yes, you could absolutely swap in some triomes for some of them that either you don't have or you do have. And, of course, I didn't put in the original gangster duels for budgetary reasons. But, of course, if you have those, put those in because why wouldn't you? All right, draw. We got Distant Melody, Tribal. You could choose a creature type and you draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. I mean, Why wouldn't you run that? Oh, and also a great tribal card for any type of tribal build. Kindred Discovery, same thing. Now just keep in mind, this requires you to draw a card whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield or attacks. So just be careful with this mid-game, late game, because even though you start with 99 cards, you can definitely mill yourself if you're not careful with Kindred's Discovery if it lasts throughout the entire game. Mystic Remora, such a sneakily powerful card, especially early game. Cumulative 1, that's fine because we keep drawing cards for any non-creature spell that an opponent casts where they're not willing to pay 4 to do it. So it is incredibly powerful. Trust me, I know. I've seen it over and over again in my play groups. You probably have too if you're familiar with it. Mystic Remora. All right, Realm Walker, not so much about draw, but being able to look at the top of your library and play those from the top of your library if they're the chosen creature type, which, of course, in this instant is Slivers. Another great include for tribal in green. Heuristic Study, I mean, yes, you draw if they don't pay 1 every time they draw a card. I mean, this is just a great staple in blue. Smothering Tide, another great staple. This actually should be in ramp. I will fix that for if you go there and check it out on Architect. This one gives you a token each time a player draws a card if they don't pay 2. This happens so frequently, you end up with so much mana in terms of tokens. It is fabuloso. We do have some life gain in here built into some slivers, Sylvan Library, so you don't have to worry so much about grabbing 3 cards a turn, paying 8 life for 2 of them. But be careful, manage your life when you have Sylvan Library out there early in the game. All right, ramp, normal ramp, Arcane Signet, yes, of course. Birds, mana dork of any color. We got Chromatic Lantern that turns all of our lands into all colors, and you tap it for 1 as well. Gemhide Sliver, like I was saying, we can go infinite with Gemhide in terms of mana. If we got some shenanigans from earlier in the episode, all slivers have tap for any color. Ignoble Hierarch, so we can get at least 3 of those colors out. Mana Weft, another sliver that gives us mana of our choosing. Noble Hierarch to get some of those other colors we need, yo. Sky Shroud Claim, this is nice because for 4, 1 in green, you can go grab 2 forest cards. Now notice it says forest, so that means we can go grab a shock land as well. All right, Soul Ring, and they come in untapped, which is why I love that card. Soul Ring, drop it for 1, you get 2 colorless. All right, slivers. Like I said, you can swap some out that maybe you don't see here. There isn't any ultimate list, but because of the fact that we're playing Sliver Overlord, I was looking for creatures that really work well with its mechanics. So we got this one with double strike for 4, Bone Scythe. Brood Sliver that creates you 1 if you do combat damage with a sliver, so that just makes your board go incredibly wide. Cutlery Sliver, this one we can sack a sliver, sack it and deal 1 damage to any target. This can go infinite if you have the right stuff out there, like the Sliver Queen and other creating slivers. You can just start wiping the board or just whack-a-mole. It's pretty hilarious. But of course you have to have the sack outlets. Cloud Shredder, this one gives haste and flying, which is very nice. Crypt Sliver, you can regenerate, tap, regenerate. Deals with those massive board wipes if you got it out and it's not an exile mechanic. Crystalline Sliver, slivers can't be targets of spells or abilities, so we got what? Basically Swiftfoot boots on everything, although not haste, unless we got the hasty ones out too. All right, Diffusion Sliver. This one is if it becomes a target, they got to pay 2 or Dormant Sliver. This one's nice if All Slivers, when this permanent enters battlefield, draw a card. So you got a huge amount of draw mechanic. And don't worry about the fact that it suddenly makes all of your Slivers not be able to attack, because you will most likely have a sack outlet to get rid of dormant Sliver when you want to. Essence Sliver, that's one of ours that gives us lifelink, so we don't have to worry too much about Sylvan Library. On top of Sliver, creatures you control have flying. The Gale Rider Sliver, this is the better of the few that do give flying because it only costs you 1 blue pip. Harmonic Sliver, this one, Slivers enter and you destroy target artifact and or enchantments. Now be careful with your board state, because we do have a few artifacts and a few enchantments, but most likely we're going to be dropping this thing and or fetching it up, because we want to get rid of persnickety garbage that your opponents have that are causing us aggravation. Heart Sliver, one of the ones that gives us haste, but so old school it doesn't actually say haste. All Slivers are unaffected by summoning sickness. Allah haste. Hibernation Sliver, each Sliver gains pay 2 life, return this creature to owner's hand. This can really pay off in a pinch, especially if there's an exile board wipe or a board wipe where we don't have regeneration or ways to get around that. We can bounce back some essential Slivers that we want to put back onto the board. All right, Magma Sliver is an interesting one. This one can actually win you games. If you're wide but you're not wide enough, all Slivers have tap, target Sliver gets plus X plus O until end of turn, where X is the number of Slivers in play. This can happen at instant speed, so you can have your whole board going, and even if you just have one going through that's unblocked, you can tap this one and well, of course, not having Magma Sliver, because you got to tap at least one. What? All right, so very, very cool mechanic if you got a board state that really needs just one to get through. All right, Megantic Sliver. This is a completely swappable card. I just really like it. It is a 6-drop, but we do have ways of really ramping up mana, especially if we are not having a lot of board wipes or we can navigate around them. Slivers get +3/+3. Super duper if we don't have a few of the other tribal cards out that we'll get to in a moment. Necrotic Sliver, one of the jankiest Slivers, I think, besides, you know, some of the primo ones like Sliver Overlord and Sliver Queen and Sliver Legion and all those. All Slivers have 4/3, sack it, destroy target permanent, which hilariously can be their lands. So, yeah. Don't be too much of a douche, though. All right, Quick Sliver. This one makes it so that you can drop Slivers onto their head at instant speed. Wonderful, including itself. Root Sliver. They can't be countered. Nope, just can't be countered. That's pretty hilarious. Hilarioso. Sentinel Sliver. This gives them vigilance. Yes, indeed. And then we got Shifting Sliver. Slivers can't be blocked except by Slivers. Well, unless they have Slivers themselves, or they've stole some of your Slivers, or they have Changelings, you are going without being impeded by blockers. Super duper hilarioso. Sliver Hive Lord. Slivers creatures you control have indestructible. For every color in the color wheel, one of the jankiest of jank. Not quite the jankiest Sliver, but it's pretty awesome. Oh, and I might mention that when you're playing Slivers, just know you're going to be immediately targeted by all of your opponents. Assuming you're playing against 3, just keep in mind they're all going to be gunning for you because Slivers are that ridiculously powerful. Sliver, Legion, and it can get out of hand real quick. All Sliver creatures get +1 for each other Sliver. So it's a coat of arms built in that doesn't help your opponents, unless, of course, they're crazily running Slivers as well. Sliver Queen. For 2, you can put a Sliver token into play. Treat this token as a 1/1 colorless creature. Super duper awesome. Siphon Sliver. They give them all lifelink as well. The first Sliver, this one gives it Cascade. Now, Cascade, that means for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all 5 colors, you can now Cascade when it hits the battlefield. which in simple terms just means you go from the top of your library down until you find a card that is that costs less than the 5. So 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's permanent, so it's not necessarily going to be the Sliver. It could be actually a mana rock or something else. But you cascade until you hit that, and then every time thereafter when that is out there, all of your Slivers have cascade as well. So it can really actually start slowing the game down. So be careful, be quick about it, and know the cascade mechanic. Woo! Got that one out. All right, Thorncaster Sliver. This one is whenever your creatures attack, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So this is also an OTK game winner if your board state is wide enough and you're going in for enough damage. Toxin Sliver. This one is if they do damage, it whack-a-moles them. So basically, old school way of saying Death Touch. Death Touch Sliver. Venom Sliver, also Death Touch. And Virulent Sliver. This one is the grossest of all of them, if you ask me, because we're dealing with poison counters. But keep in mind, this is not infect. That means if a Sliver does damage, they get a total of 1 poison counters per Sliver. So if you're swinging in with a 20/20 Sliver, they're still only going to get 1 poison counter for that Sliver, not 20, because this is not infect. There is a differentiation. Cool beans, as my buddy Josh likes to say. All right, just a few tutors you'd expect if you have seen any of our other episodes. Demonic Tutor for 2, go grab it, put it in your hand. Mystical Tutor, go grab it, put it in on top of your library, an instant or a sorcery. And Vampiric, same thing, except any card, put it on top of your library and reveal it. I think you also have to, do you have to reveal it? Yes, you have to reveal Mystic Tutor as well. But hey, in a pinch, you need that Cyclonic Rift, go tutor it up. Yes, you have to show it, but more often than not, they're not going to be able to deal with that board state unless they have a counter as well. All right, some staples in terms of protection, Heroic Intervention. All your permanents get hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. And Steely Resolve. Creatures of the chosen type can't be the target of spells or ability. And the creme de la creme, Teferi's Protection. Got to do this with my hands because we're here. Teferi's Protection. Everything phases out, including yourself. Can't lose life, can't gain life. None of your permanents exist until your untap step. Just so hilarious. And at instant speed, of course, which is the reason Teferi's Protection is so bueno. Just a few counter spells, some that will come in a pinch, or if you need a Mystic Tutor one because you know there's something coming. Counter spell, Dovin's Veto that cannot be countered itself for a non-creature spell. Counter non-creature spell, because we're really mainly concerned with non-creature spells countering those. Swan Song to counter enchantment, instant, or sorcery. They get a 2/2 flying. Birdie, tweet, tweet, which we don't give a crapola about. All right, we got a few tribal cards. Descendant's Path, great in any tribal card in green. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card that shares a creature type with a creature you control, notice you have to have a Sliver out, which most likely you will. You can cast it without paying its mana cost. You got to cast it, so therefore it is counterable, but whatevs. Door of Destinies, one of the coolest tribal cards. You choose your tribe, Slivers here, and each time one of your tribe hits the battlefield, this thing gets a +1/+1 counter. However many it has on it, that's how big your gigantic creatures are at that point. Also a great stable, Herald's Horn. This is more about being able to get the top card and play it if it is a Sliver, and it costs 1 less to cast, which is also very, very bueno. And that's across the board. So cards in your hand, cards on top of your library. It's very nice. Mana Echoes. This one, depending on what you're trying to do, and if you're in red, may or may not be right for your build. For this one, I felt it was right. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of colors equal to the number of creatures you control that shares a creature type with it. This gives you a lot of mana, which depending on your board state, could create you a lot of slivers. Especially if they have haste. That would be super hilarious and fun because people hate to play against slivers because they do this kind of crap. Ah! Vanquisher's Banner. This isn't so much about getting the +1/+1, but it's more about when you cast a creature, you get to draw a card, which is nice. Very, very nice. And that goes through our card selection for Sliver Overlord. It is a fun, fantastic deck to play. Yes, it does have a few of the financially spendy cards, so if you just can't hit that budgetarily, go ahead and look through the maybe board. There are a few slivers in there that could easily be swapped in if you don't have the finances for it, or you just don't particularly want to play Sliver Queen or something for some cray reason. All right, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the channel. All right, peace out.